The day I walked out on Ethan was the day I promised myself I'd never look back. 3 years together, thrown away the moment I caught him with Claire from work. His just a friend, who was clearly much more. I packed what little I could carry and disappeared without a word, rebuilding my life piece by painful piece in a city where nobody knew my name. For 6 months, there was blessed silence, until yesterday. His text, "Found you." Then today, flowers at my door. Now he's everywhere, outside my apartment, at my favourite cafe, even talking to my boss. The Ethan I knew was gentle, predictable. This man stalking my footsteps has a desperate edge that terrifies me. "Just 5 minutes, he begs from across the street, rain soaking his expensive suit. Claire meant nothing. But the diamond ring I found in his drawer that night wasn't meant for me. I know that much. So why won't he let me go? And why, despite everything, does my traitorous heart still skip when I see his face? The first time I saw Ethan again after 6 months of silence, I dropped my coffee. Literally. The paper cup hit the sidewalk, splashing hot liquid across my shoes and onto the pristine hem of his designer pants. His eyes, those warm brown eyes I'd spent years getting lost in, locked with mine. And for a moment, the busy street around us disappeared. "Mia," he breathed, like my name was both a prayer and a revelation. I ran. 3 blocks in heels before I dared look back. No sign of him. My hands trembled as I fumbled with my phone, calling my roommate Lisa. "He found me," I gasped when she answered. "I don't know how, but he's here." How do you explain to someone the complexity of running from a man who was never physically abusive, never overtly cruel? Lisa had only heard pieces of my story. She didn't understand why the sight of my ex-boyfriend would send me fleeing through downtown traffic. "Just come home," she said firmly. "I'll be waiting." Home. What a strange concept. My home was now a shared apartment in a city I'd chosen precisely because Ethan would never think to look for me here. I'd left behind the spacious condo we'd shared, my job at the marketing firm where we'd met, even my favourite coffee shop where the baristas knew my order by heart. I'd abandoned everything to escape the suffocating reality of what we'd become. When I arrived at our apartment, Lisa was waiting with a glass of wine and concern etched across her face. I sank onto our second-hand couch and tried to steady my breathing. "Start from the beginning," she urged. The beginning. Which beginning? The day we met, the day I fell in love, the day I found him with her, or the beginning of today, when my carefully constructed new life cracked open at the seams. "I met Ethan 3 years ago at a company mixer," I started, the words feeling rehearsed after telling myself this story so many times, searching for signs I'd missed. He was brilliant, ambitious, charming. Everyone wanted his attention, but somehow he only had eyes for me. Lisa nodded patiently, though she'd heard this part before. We moved in together after 8 months. Everything was perfect. At least, I thought it was. He brought me coffee every morning, left little notes in my planner, called just to hear my voice. I took a long sip of wine. But then Claire joined his department. Claire, with her effortless beauty and razor-sharp intelligence. Claire, who shared Ethan's passion for obscure films and rock climbing. Claire, who looked at him exactly the way I had 3 years ago. At first, I told myself I was being paranoid. They were just colleagues, friends at most. But then the late nights started. The missed calls, the texts he'd smile at but wouldn't show me. I remembered the gnawing doubt, how it ate away at my confidence, my peace of mind, how I began to question my own perceptions. The night it happened, he said he was working late on a pitch. I decided to surprise him with dinner at the office. I closed my eyes, the memory still vivid enough to make my stomach clench. They were in the conference room. She was sitting on the table and he was standing between her legs. They weren't. It wasn't. But it was enough. What I didn't tell Lisa was the worst part, the way Ethan had looked at me when I dropped the takeout bags. Not guilty, not even surprised, just annoyed at the interruption. I left that night, packed a bag while he was in the shower, took some cash and disappeared. Blocked his number, deleted my social media, even changed my email. I looked around our modest apartment. Started over here. Lisa leaned forward. And now he's found you. Did he say anything? I shook my head. I ran before he could. But seeing him, it was like no time had passed at all. My voice cracked. What does he want from me? I didn't have to wait long to find out. The next morning, a bouquet of lilies, my favourite, arrived at our door. The card simply read, "Please talk to me, E." No apology, no explanation. Just a demand disguised as a request. I threw the flowers in the dumpster behind our building. The following day, I spotted him across the street from the boutique where I worked. Just standing there, watching. When our eyes met through the window, he raised his hand in a tentative wave. I turned away, helping a customer choose between nearly identical black dresses with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. By the third day, my initial fear had hardened into something like anger. Who did he think he was, barging into my carefully reconstructed life? I confronted him that evening as he waited outside my building. "Why are you here?" I demanded, keeping my distance on the sidewalk. Ethan looked different somehow, thinner. The confident set of his shoulders I'd always admired was diminished. His expensive suit, the same brand he'd always worn, hung slightly loose. "I needed to see you," he said simply. "Well, now you have. Go home, Ethan." He took a step toward me. I took one back. "Mia, please, just give me 5 minutes to explain." "Explain what? How you lied to me for months? How you made me feel crazy for suspecting something was happening?" My voice rose despite my determination to stay calm. "Or maybe you want to explain the engagement ring I found in your drawer the night I left, the one you definitely weren't planning to give to me." His face registered genuine surprise. "You found the ring?" "While I was packing, kind of cemented my decision to leave." I crossed my arms. "So whatever you're doing here, whatever you want, the answer is no. We're done." "The ring was for you," he said quietly. I laughed, the sound harsh and unfamiliar. "Right. That's why you were wrapped around Claire in the conference room the same day." "It wasn't what it looked like." "It never is it?" I started to walk away. "She kissed me," he called after me. "I was pushing her away when you walked in." I stopped, but didn't turn around. I'd gone to get the ring that day. It was in my pocket when you found us. I was going to propose that weekend. Slowly, I faced him again. Even if that were true, which I don't believe for a second, it doesn't erase the months of lies, the late nights, the way you pulled away from me. I shook my head. "I'm not doing this. Please, just leave me alone." This time, when I walked away, he didn't follow. I thought that would be the end of it. I really did. But the next day, I arrived at work to find my manager, Denise, chatting animatedly with a familiar figure. My stomach dropped. "Mia," Denise called, waving me over. "This gentleman says he's an old friend of yours. He's interested in our visual merchandising services for his company." Ethan extended his hand, as if we were strangers meeting for the first time. "Ethan Blackwood," he introduced himself, eyes never leaving mine. "It's been a while." I forced myself to shake his hand, the brief contact sending an unwelcome jolt through my system. "Yes, it has." I was just telling Denise how I admired the window display. "Your work, I assume?" Of course he would know. He'd always paid attention to the details of my life, remembered things I mentioned in passing. It was one of the things I'd loved about him. "Mia is one of our most talented designers," Denise gushed. I was just saying she'd be perfect to head up a project for Mr. Blackwood's company. My heart raced. Actually, I'm quite busy with the seasonal displays. I wouldn't want anyone else, Ethan interrupted smoothly. Your aesthetic is exactly what we're looking for. I could see the excitement in Denise's eyes. This would be a major client for our small boutique. Refusing would require explanations I wasn't prepared to give. We can discuss the details over lunch, Ethan suggested, turning to Denise. Would you mind if I borrowed Mia for an hour? Old friends catching up and all that? Before I could protest, Denise was practically pushing me out the door, whispering, Land this client, and there's a promotion in it for you. The cafe Ethan chose was quiet, tucked away on a side street. Too intimate, too much like the places we used to frequent when we were together. This is inappropriate, I said as soon as we were seated, using my job to force me to see you. He had the decency to look somewhat ashamed. I didn't know where else to find you. You've blocked me on everything. That should have been your first clue that I don't want to talk to you. Mia. He reached across the table. I pulled my hands into my lap. He sighed. I have spent 6 months looking for you. 6 months replaying that night over and over in my head, wishing I could explain. Go ahead then, I challenged. Explain why I shouldn't walk out of here right now and file a harassment complaint with my manager. He flinched at the word harassment, and I felt a twinge of guilt that I immediately suppressed. Claire kissed me, he said flatly. She knew I was planning to propose to you. I'd been distracted at work, nervous about getting everything right. She guessed why and made her move. And all those late nights, the texts you wouldn't let me see, the way you pulled away from me for weeks before that. The late nights were real. We were working on a massive campaign. The texts. He hesitated. Some were from Claire. She was persistent. I should have shut it down sooner, but I didn't want to create drama in the department. So you created drama in our relationship instead. I never cheated on you, Mia. Not physically, not emotionally. Was I flattered by her attention? Yes. Did I enjoy talking to someone who understood the pressure I was under at work? Also, yes. He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture I remembered well. But I never wanted her. Not once. The night I found you, I'd been avoiding her advances for weeks. That night, she cornered me after everyone left. Said she knew about the ring, that I was making a mistake. Then, she kissed me. You walked in maybe 10 seconds later. His eyes pleaded with me. I was pushing her away, Mia. I swear it. I wanted to believe him. God help me. Some part of me wanted to accept this version of events where I hadn't been replaced, where our relationship hadn't been a lie. But I'd spent 6 months rebuilding myself from the ground up, learning to trust my instincts again. Even if what you're saying is true, I said carefully, it doesn't change anything. You let her get close enough that this could happen. You kept her texts secret. You made me feel crazy for questioning your relationship with her. I know, he said quietly, and I'm more sorry than I can express. But, Mia, we had 3 amazing years together. Are you really willing to throw that away without even hearing me out? I already did throw it away, I reminded him. 6 months ago, sir. The waiter appeared to take our order. I asked for just a coffee. Claire was transferred to the London office 2 days after you left, Ethan continued once we were alone again. I made it clear to HR that we couldn't work together. How noble of you, I said, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. I'm not trying to paint myself as the hero here, he responded, frustration edging into his tone. I'm just telling you what happened. After you left, I tried everything to find you. Your friends wouldn't tell me anything. Your family claimed they didn't know where you'd gone. They didn't. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. He looked pained at this. You just vanished. Do you have any idea what that did to me? Do you have any idea what finding you with her did to me? I countered. I trusted you completely, Ethan. I built my life around you, and in one moment, it all fell apart. I want to rebuild that trust, he said, leaning forward intently. Whatever it takes. I haven't been with anyone since you left. I haven't even tried. There's only you, Mia. There's only ever been you. The coffee arrived, giving me a moment to collect my thoughts. How many times had I imagined this conversation over the past 6 months? How many times had I played out scenarios where he found me, explained everything, and we fell back into each other's arms like nothing had happened? But the reality was messier, more complicated. The ache of betrayal hadn't disappeared just because he'd offered an explanation. I can't do this, I said finally. I've built a new life here, a life without constant doubt and anxiety. I can't go back. I'm not asking you to go back, he said quickly. I want us to move forward, together. I'll relocate here if that's what you want. I'll change jobs, change everything. That's not... Just think about it, he interrupted. Please. That's all I'm asking. Think about giving us another chance. I stood, placing money on the table for my untouched coffee. I need to get back to work. Will you at least consider the contract for your boutique? It's legitimate. My company genuinely needs the service. Business and pleasure, always intertwined with Ethan. I hesitated, thinking of Denise's excitement, the promotion dangling just out of reach. Send the proposal to Denise, I said finally. I'll review it professionally, but this, I gestured between us, isn't happening again. He nodded, accepting the boundary. Fair enough. As I turned to leave, he called after me. Mia, thank you for talking to me today. I've missed your voice. I didn't respond, but I felt his words follow me all the way back to the boutique. That night, I couldn't sleep. Ethan's explanation played on repeat in my mind, alongside the memory of what I'd seen in that conference room. Had I misinterpreted, jumped to conclusions? Or was this just another example of Ethan's remarkable ability to craft narratives that suited his purposes? I reached for my phone, scrolling to the photos I'd kept despite my best efforts to erase all traces of him from my life. There we were, in Cabo, his arms around my waist as we watched the sunset. At his company Christmas party, both of us laughing at some forgotten joke. Moving day at our condo, surrounded by boxes and takeout containers, exhausted but happy. We looked so in love. Had it all been real? The next morning brought an elaborate proposal from Ethan's company, complete with a budget that made Denise's eyes widen. She assigned me as lead designer without even asking if I wanted the project. This could put us on the map, she gushed, flipping through the glossy portfolio. And he specifically requested you. Did you two date in college or something? Or something, I muttered, scanning the documents. It was a legitimate project, a complete visual overhaul for their flagship store, the kind of opportunity that came once in a career. The client wants an initial meeting tomorrow afternoon, Denise continued. Their office downtown. His office, his territory. I shook my head. Could we suggest meeting here instead? Denise frowned. They have a full mock-up of the space at their office. It would be much more efficient to meet there. She studied me closely. Is there a problem, Mia? I forced a smile. No problem. I'll be there. The rest of the day passed in a blur of anxiety and preparation. By evening, I was exhausted, barely registering the knock at our apartment door until Lisa called my name. Delivery for you, she said, carrying in another bouquet, not lilies this time, but wildflowers. Simple, understated, exactly the kind I'd once mentioned, preferring over traditional arrangements. The card read, "No pressure about tomorrow. This is your project to lead." E? Lisa raised an eyebrow. Someone's persistent. I placed the flowers on our kitchen table, surprising myself by not immediately throwing them away. He's always been good at grand gestures. Are you going to tell me what happened at lunch yesterday? I sighed, sinking onto the couch. He claims it was all a misunderstanding, that she kissed him, not the other way around, that the ring was actually for me. And do you believe him? Did I? The question had been haunting me since our lunch. I don't know, I admitted. The Ethan I knew was honest to a fault, but the Ethan I knew also wouldn't have let another woman get close enough to cause problems. People make mistakes, Lisa said gently, sometimes big ones. This wasn't just a mistake, it was a breach of trust. I picked at a loose thread on the couch. Even if I could forgive him, I don't know if I could ever trust him again. Yet, you kept his flowers, Lisa pointed out. I had no good response to that. The next afternoon, I arrived at Ethan's company headquarters with my portfolio and a determination to keep things strictly professional. The receptionist, not anyone I recognised from my previous visits, directed me to a conference room on the 15th floor. I half expected to find Ethan waiting alone, but instead a team of 5 people greeted me, including the company's marketing director. Ethan sat at the far end of the table, dressed impeccably as always, but maintaining a respectful distance. "Miss Reynolds," the marketing director began, "we're thrilled you could join us. Ethan speaks highly of your design sensibilities." I set up my presentation, hyper-aware of Ethan's eyes on me. Throughout the meeting, he remained the consummate professional, asking relevant questions about the design concepts, but never crossing into personal territory. If the other team members noticed any tension, they didn't show it. "I think we found our designer," he announced. "Ethan, would you mind walking Miss Reynolds out? I have another call in 5. And just like that, we were alone in the elevator. "Thank you for coming," Ethan said, maintaining a careful distance. "Your concepts are exactly what we've been looking for." "Thank you for the opportunity," I responded automatically. We rode in silence for several floors before he spoke again. "I meant what I said about no pressure. This project is yours regardless of anything else." The elevator doors opened to the lobby. As I stepped out, Ethan remained inside. "Aren't you coming?" I asked. He shook his head. "I have some work to finish upstairs. But Mia," he held the door open with his hand, "I'd still like to talk. When you're ready. If you're ever ready." The doors closed before I could respond. Over the next few weeks, Ethan kept his distance. No more surprise visits, no more flowers. Our communication was limited to professional emails about the project, always copied to Denise or other team members. Part of me was relieved. Another part, a part I didn't want to acknowledge, was disappointed. One evening, nearly a month after his reappearance in my life, I found myself working late at the boutique. A spring storm had rolled in, rain lashing against the windows as I finalised designs for Ethan's project. When I finally emerged, the streets were deserted, most people having sought shelter from the downpour. I didn't have an umbrella. Within seconds, I was soaked, hurrying toward the bus stop 2 blocks away. Lost in my misery, I almost didn't notice the figure across the street until he called my name. Ethan stood beneath a black umbrella, looking as drenched as I was, despite the protection. How long had he been waiting there? "Mia," he called again, watching for traffic before jogging across to me. "Let me drive you home." I hesitated, rain streaming down my face. "How did you know I was here?" "I didn't," he admitted. "I was meeting a client nearby. Saw you through the window earlier." He held the umbrella over me, rain now soaking him instead. "Please, just let me give you a ride. No talking necessary." My teeth were beginning to chatter. The bus wouldn't arrive for another 20 minutes at least. Pride warred with practicality. "Fine," I conceded, "just a ride." His car was parked around the corner, the same sleek black Audi he'd driven when we were together. The familiar scent of leather and his cologne hit me as I slid into the passenger seat. memories flooding back of countless drives together, his hand resting on my knee, my head against his shoulder at red lights. "Your address?" he asked, breaking into my thoughts. I gave him directions, then fell silent, watching raindrops race down the window. The quiet between us felt charged, filled with unsaid words. "How's the project coming along?" he asked eventually, eyes fixed on the road. "Good. We're finalising the design concepts this week." "The team is impressed. They keep asking where I found you." I couldn't help but smile slightly. "What do you tell them?" "That you're the one who got away." The simple honesty in his voice made my chest tighten. I turned to look at him properly for the first time since entering the car. In the dim light, with rain streaking the windows behind him, he looked almost exactly as he had the day we met, except for the sadness in his eyes that hadn't been there before. "Ethan." "Sorry," he interrupted. "I promised no talking." We lapsed back into silence until he pulled up outside my apartment building. "Thank you for the ride," I said, hand on the door handle. "Mia," his voice stopped me. "I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to convince you that what you saw wasn't what you thought. I don't know how to prove that I never stopped loving you, not for a single moment." Rain hammered on the roof of the car, creating a cocoon around us. "I found someone's underwear in our bedroom drawer," I said quietly, 2 months before that night. "I never told you because I was afraid of what it meant. I convinced myself I'd somehow mixed up my laundry with someone else's at the cleaners." He looked genuinely shocked. "They weren't. Mia, I swear to you, I never brought anyone to our home. Never." "They were the same size as Claire's," I continued, the admission burning my throat. "I saw her gym bag once when she was leaving the office. Same brand." Understanding dawned on his face, followed by horror. "The office party, 2 months before you left. Claire spilled wine on herself, and Sarah from accounting offered her a change of clothes. Sarah had just been shopping. She left the bag with extra items in my office to pick up later." It sounded plausible, too plausible, or maybe exactly plausible enough to be true. "Why didn't you tell me you found them?" he asked. "Because I was terrified of the answer," I admitted. Because part of me already suspected something was happening and I wasn't ready to have it confirmed. I looked down at my hands. "Because I loved you too much to face losing you. And then you walked in that night and thought you saw confirmation of everything you'd feared." His voice was hollow. I nodded, unable to speak around the lump in my throat. "Mia, look at me." Reluctantly, I raised my eyes to his. "I have never been unfaithful to you. Not with Claire, not with anyone. Those weren't her clothes. What you saw that night wasn't what you thought. The ring was for you, only ever for you." Rain continued to drum on the roof, filling the silence between us. "I don't know if I can trust that," I finally whispered. "I don't know if I can trust you." "Then let me earn that trust back," he pleaded, "day by day. No pressure, no grand gestures, just don't shut the door completely." Something shifted inside me. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps the possibility of it. The willingness to consider that what we'd had might be worth fighting for. "I need time," I said. He nodded, relief visible in the set of his shoulders. "Time is something I can give you." I stepped out into the rain, pausing before closing the car door. "Good night, Ethan. Good night, Mia." I watched him drive away, rain mingling with tears I hadn't realised I'd shed. The next day, a small package arrived at the boutique, a simple silver key on a chain. The note read, "The key to our old place. I've kept everything exactly as you left it. It's still your home too, whenever you're ready. No pressure. E." I called him that evening, fingers trembling as I dialed the number I still knew by heart. "I'd like to see the condo," I said when he answered, skipping any greeting. "Not to come back, just to see it. Of course, he replied, trying and failing to mask his excitement. When? This weekend? Saturday afternoon? I'll be there. Or not, if you'd prefer to go alone. I hesitated. No, you should be there. Saturday arrived with clear skies and a knot of anxiety in my stomach. I took a taxi to our old neighbourhood, memories assaulting me with each familiar landmark we passed. The coffee shop where we'd had our first date, the park where we'd walked our neighbour's dog on weekends, the Italian restaurant where we'd celebrated my promotion. The condo building looked exactly the same, sleek and modern, with a doorman who smiled in recognition as I approached. Miss Reynolds, it's been too long. I managed to smile in return. Hello, George. Mr. Blackwood is already upstairs, he informed me, gesturing toward the elevator. The ride to the 12th floor gave me time to compose myself, to remind myself why I was here, not to reconcile, just to see the space, to confront the memories I'd been running from. Ethan opened the door before I could knock, as if he'd been waiting just inside. He was dressed casually in jeans and a blue sweater I'd bought him for his birthday 2 years ago. Hi, he said simply, stepping back to let me in. I walked through the doorway and froze. The condo was exactly as I remembered it, my books still on the shelves, my paintings on the walls, even my favourite throw blanket draped over the arm of the sofa. It was as if I'd never left. You really didn't change anything, I said, and running my fingers along the back of the couch. I couldn't, he admitted. Changing it meant accepting you weren't coming back. I moved through the space slowly, taking in the familiar and the slightly altered. Fresh flowers in the vase I'd bought in Mexico. A stack of mail with my name on it. I picked up an envelope. Oops. Your mother insisted on sending your birthday card here, Ethan explained. I told her I didn't know where you were, but she said you'd come back eventually. My mother. Always the optimist. I continued into the kitchen, where a photo of us still held pride of place on the refrigerator. Ethan and me on a boat, wind in our hair, laughing at something now forgotten. Do you want something to drink? He offered. Coffee? Wine? Coffee would be nice. He moved to the machine, the expensive one I'd surprised him with one Christmas, and began the familiar ritual of measuring beans, filling the water reservoir. I watched his hands, remembering how they felt on my skin, in my hair, holding mine across restaurant tables. How's work? I asked, desperate for normal conversation. Busy. I'm heading up a new division. More responsibility, more stress. He glanced at me. Less fulfilling, without someone to come home to. I ignored the implication. The new division? Is that why you're expanding the flagship store? Partly. He handed me a mug. My mug, the one with tiny painted birds around the rim. Success feels different now. Hollow. I took a sip of coffee, perfectly prepared the way I liked it. Ethan, why are you doing this? The project with my boutique, finding me, all of it. Because I love you, he said simply. Because the life I thought we were building together was ripped away without warning, and I never got the chance to fight for it. He leaned against the counter, keeping distance between us. Because I've spent 6 months living in this place filled with memories of you, knowing I made mistakes that cost me the most important person in my life. The conference room was the worst timing in the world, he finished. If you'd walked in 30 seconds later, you would have seen me pushing her away. If you'd stayed 5 minutes longer, you would have heard me tell her I was in love with you and planning to propose that weekend. If it was all so innocent, why didn't you chase after me that night? Why didn't you stop me from leaving? I did, he said quietly, but you'd already gone by the time I got downstairs. I went to our place, but you weren't there either. I called 100 times that night. I remembered silencing my phone, turning it off completely as I checked into a hotel across town. The next day, I went to your friends, your family. No one knew where you were, or, if they did, they wouldn't tell me. He set down his mug. By the time I realised you truly disappeared, the trail was cold. How did you find me? I asked, the question that had been nagging at me since his reappearance. Pure luck, he admitted. A client mentioned a boutique with the most amazing window displays he'd ever seen. Showed me a photo he'd taken. There was a reflection in the glass. Just a glimpse, but I'd know you anywhere. The simplicity of it was almost anticlimactic. After months of careful concealment, I'd been found because someone appreciated my work enough to photograph it. Can I show you something? Ethan asked, setting down his mug. I nodded, following him to the bedroom. Our bedroom. The sight of the familiar space, our bed still made with the duvet I'd chosen, nearly undid my composure. On the nightstand, where I'd once kept a stack of novels, sat a small velvet box. Ethan picked it up but didn't open it. This is the ring, the one you found that night. He held it out to me. Look at the inscription. Hesitantly, I took the box, opening it to reveal a platinum band with a solitaire diamond. Elegant, understated, exactly what I would have chosen for myself. I removed it carefully, tilting it to read the tiny engraving inside. Mia and Ethan, forever begins April 15th, 22. April 15th. The date he'd planned to propose. 3 days after I'd found them together. I had it custom made, he said softly. Ordered it 2 months before that night. That's where some of those late nights went. Meetings with the jeweller after work. I returned the ring to its box, emotions threatening to overwhelm me. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, he assured me quickly. I'm not proposing now. I just wanted you to see that what I told you was true. I sat on the edge of the bed, suddenly exhausted by the weight of possibilities opening before me. What if I'd been wrong? What if I'd thrown away something real and precious based on a misunderstanding born of insecurity and timing? I've missed this place, I admitted, missed the view, the quiet. I didn't say missed you, but the words hung in the air between us. It's still your home, he said, whether I'm in it or not. I looked up at him, really looked at him, the man I'd loved, still loved despite my best efforts not to. I can't just pick up where we left off, Ethan. Too much has happened. I know, he agreed. I'm not asking for that. I'm asking for a chance to start again. Properly, this time. No secrets, no misunderstandings. I stood, needing space to think. I need to process all this. Take all the time you need, he said, though I could see the hope in his eyes warring with the fear that I'd disappear again. I wandered back to the living room, stopping at the bookshelf where photo albums still held our shared history. I pulled one out. Our trip to Hawaii, our 2nd anniversary. Remember the sea turtle? Ethan asked, keeping a respectful distance. How could I forget? You were so scared. I smiled despite myself, remembering Ethan's panic when a massive turtle had swum directly beneath him while snorkeling. I wasn't scared, he protested, the familiar banter slipping out naturally. I was startled. You screamed through your snorkel. We both laughed, the sound fading into a comfortable silence. I should go, I said finally, closing the album. This is a lot to take in. Ethan nodded, disappointment evident but restrained. Can I call you? Or would you prefer to contact me when you're ready? I considered. You can call, but I can't promise where this will lead. That's all I'm asking for, he said. A chance. As I left the condo, the doorman smiled knowingly, as if he'd been expecting this reunion all along. I couldn't bring myself to correct his assumption. I spent the following week in a daze, moving through my routine while my mind replayed our conversation on a continuous loop. The ring inscription, the explanation for the underwear, the conference room scene reframed with mere seconds of difference. Lisa watched my internal struggle with concern. You're thinking about taking him back, aren't you? I'm thinking about considering the possibility that I might have misinterpreted things, I admitted, stirring my coffee absently. And if you did, if his version is the truth, can you forgive him for letting things get to that point in the first place? She asked. It was the question I'd been avoiding. Even if Ethan hadn't technically cheated, he'd created conditions where another woman felt comfortable enough to make a move. He'd hidden texts, worked late nights with someone clearly interested in him, kept me at arm's length during a vulnerable time. I don't know, I answered honestly. Ethan called that evening, his voice carefully controlled as he asked about my day, the weather, anything but the question burning between us. The boutique received the final payment for the project design phase, I said. Denise is thrilled. The team loves what you've created, he replied. They're already talking about future collaborations. More connections, more reasons to stay in each other's orbit. Was that his plan? Ethan, I interrupted his description of implementation timelines. I need to ask you something. Anything, he said immediately. If I hadn't left that night, if I'd stayed and listened to your explanation, what would have happened with us? He was silent for a moment. I would have proposed that weekend, as planned. We would have gotten married in the fall like we talked about, started trying for a family next year. His voice softened. We would have built the life we always wanted, Mia. And Claire would have been transferred regardless. I'd already put in the request before that night, after she made her interest clear one too many times. Why didn't you tell me about her? I pressed. About the texts, the attention. He sighed. Pride, at first. I thought I could handle it professionally without involving you. Then fear that you'd see it as my fault somehow, that I'd encouraged her. A pause. And then it was too late. You were already suspicious, and anything I said would have sounded like an excuse. His honesty disarmed me. It sounded like the Ethan I'd known. Flawed, occasionally stubborn, but fundamentally decent. I need more time, I said. Take all you need, he replied. I'm not going anywhere. The following Saturday, I found myself outside our old condo building again, this time without calling ahead. I hadn't planned to come. My feet had simply carried me here after a morning of restless wandering. George greeted me with the same warm smile. He's upstairs, Miss Reynolds. Of course he was. Where else would he be on a perfect spring Saturday? This time, I knocked. The look of surprise on Ethan's face when he opened the door confirmed he hadn't been expecting me. Mia, he breathed, hair rumpled, dressed in old jeans and a faded t-shirt, his cleaning clothes. I wasn't. Come in. The condo smelled of lemon furniture polish and coffee. A vacuum stood abandoned in the hallway, cleaning supplies scattered on the coffee table. Saturday, cleaning day, I observed, our old routine. Some habits are hard to break, he admitted, hastily gathering stray socks from the couch. Sorry about the mess. It's fine, I said, unable to stop my smile. Ethan, for all his professional polish, had always been slightly chaotic at home. I should have called first. No, I'm glad you're here. Any time, any day. He began stuffing cleaning supplies into a basket. Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water? I'm fine. I moved to the windows, looking out at the city view I'd once loved. I've been thinking about what you said, about us, about what happened. He set down the basket, giving me his full attention. And I'm still angry, I admitted. Not just about that night, but about all the little things that led to it. The distance you put between us. The secrets, even if they weren't the secrets I imagined. He nodded, accepting the criticism without defense. But I'm also tired of being angry, I continued. Tired of wondering what might have been. Tired of pretending I don't still care about you. Hope bloomed across his features, cautious but unmistakable. I'm not saying I'm ready to move back in, I clarified quickly, or wear that ring. But I am saying, maybe we could try again, slowly, one day at a time. That's all I want, he said, the relief in his voice palpable. Just a chance to prove myself to you again. No grand gestures, I warned. No using work to manipulate situations. No pressure. Agreed, he said quickly. Completely on your terms. I laughed softly. When has anything between us ever been completely on one person's terms? He smiled. The first genuine, unguarded smile I'd seen from him since before our separation. Fair point. How about this? We agree to be honest with each other, painfully, awkwardly honest if necessary. I can work with that, I agreed. So, he said carefully, what happens now? Now, I decided, you finish your cleaning, because I know it'll bother you all day if you don't. And then maybe we could get lunch. Nothing fancy, just food and conversation. I'd like that, he said, eyes never leaving mine. Very much. We ended up at our old favourite deli, sharing a table by the window. The owner recognised us instantly, clapping Ethan on the shoulder and kissing my cheek as if no time had passed. The usual? He asked, already scribbling on his notepad. I glanced at Ethan, who shrugged. Some things don't need to change. Over sandwiches and iced tea, we talked. Really talked, without the weight of accusations or explanations hanging over us. About my new job, his new projects, about Lisa, who'd become my closest friend, about his parents, who apparently asked about me constantly. They miss you, he said. Mum keeps accidentally making your favourite cookies when I visit. I miss them too, I admitted. His family had embraced me completely, never making me feel like the outsider I'd feared becoming. As afternoon stretched into evening, we lingered, reluctant to end this fragile reconnection. When we finally left the deli, Ethan walked me to the subway station, maintaining a careful distance. I had a good time today, he said as we reached the entrance. So did I realised, surprised by how easy it had been to fall back into conversation with him. Can I call you tomorrow? Maybe we could do something next weekend? The old Mia would have hesitated, protected her heart, kept him at arm's length. But I wasn't the old Mia anymore. These 6 months had changed me, made me stronger, more certain of what I wanted. I'd like that, I said. He smiled, relief washing over his features. Good night, Mia. On impulse, I leaned forward and kissed his cheek, a brief touch that sent electricity through my veins. Good night, Ethan. I descended into the subway station, feeling lighter than I had in months. The following weeks brought a careful dance of rediscovery, coffee dates after work, long phone conversations that stretched into the early morning hours, weekend walks through parts of the city we'd never explored together. We were building something new, I realised, not trying to resurrect what we'd had, but creating something stronger, more honest, from the ashes of our past relationship. 1 month after our reunion at the condo, Ethan invited me to dinner at a new restaurant overlooking the harbour. Nothing fancy, he promised, remembering my ban on grand gestures, just good food and a nice view. The restaurant was indeed lovely, intimate without being overwrought, elegant without pretension. As we were seated at a window table, I noticed Ethan's fingers drumming nervously on the tablecloth. Everything okay? I asked after we'd ordered. Perfect, he said quickly, too quickly. Why? You seem nervous. He laughed, caught. That obvious, huh? Only to someone who knows you, I said, realising the truth in those words. I did know him, his habits, his tells, his heart. Despite everything, that knowledge remained. I wanted to ask you something, he began, then stopped as our appetizers arrived. I waited, curious, as the server arranged dishes between us. Once we were alone again, Ethan took a deep breath. The lease on your apartment with Lisa, it's up next month, isn't it? I nodded, surprised he'd remembered such a detail from one of our conversations. I was wondering if you'd consider not renewing it. My heart stuttered. Ethan, not to move back in with me, he clarified hastily. Not unless you want to. But I thought maybe you might want your own place. The condo next to ours is available. The owner's relocating overseas. You want me to be your neighbour? I asked, amused despite myself. I want you to have options, he said seriously. No pressure. But I know Lisa's boyfriend has been staying over more often, and the commute from your place to the boutique is long, and... He trailed off, looking uncertain. It was just an idea. I considered it. My own space, but close to Ethan. Independence, but proximity. A step forward, but not a leap. I'll think about it, I promised. He nodded, visibly relieved that I hadn't immediately rejected the suggestion. That's all I ask. 2 weeks later, I signed the lease on the neighbouring condo. Lisa was sad to see me go, but understood. Just be careful, she warned as she helped me pack. Make sure you're doing this for you, not for him. I am, I assured her. I need my own space to figure out what I want. Moving day arrived with clear skies and a sense of déjà vu as Ethan helped carry boxes from the moving truck. Unlike our first move together years ago, this time we were establishing separate spaces, connected but distinct. That evening, exhausted from unpacking, I found myself on my new balcony, staring at the city lights. A soft knock on the door interrupted my thoughts. Ethan stood there with a bottle of wine and 2 glasses. Housewarming tradition? He explained. If you're not too tired. I invited him onto the balcony, accepting a glass of wine as we settled into adjacent chairs. To new beginnings, he toasted, clinking his glass gently against mine. To new beginnings, I echoed. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the city below. After a while, Ethan spoke. I never stopped looking for you, even when everyone told me to give up, that you clearly didn't want to be found. He stared into his wine. I kept thinking about all the things I should have said that night, all the ways I could have prevented you from leaving. I wasn't ready to listen then, I admitted. I was too hurt, too convinced of what I thought I knew. And now? He asked, turning to face me. Now, I think, maybe we needed this time apart. Maybe I needed to build a life without you to understand what I really wanted. And what do you want, Mia? His voice was soft, vulnerable. I met his gaze. I want to stop being afraid, of being hurt again, of trusting you, of loving you. I took a deep breath. Because I never stopped, loving you. Even when I hated you, I loved you. He set down his glass and reached for my hand. I let him take it, his fingers warm against mine. I have something for you, he said. Not a grand gesture, I promise. From his pocket, he withdrew a small worn piece of paper, folded and refolded so many times the creases were soft as fabric. He handed it to me. I opened it carefully. It was a note, written in my handwriting. A simple grocery list I'd left on the counter the morning before I found him with Claire. At the bottom, I'd scrawled, "Love you always, M." I kept it, Ethan said quietly. All these months. It was the last thing you wrote to me before everything fell apart. Tears pricked at my eyes. Such a small thing. Such an ordinary moment of domesticity, preserved like a precious relic. We can't go back, I said, folding the note carefully. We can't erase what happened. I know, he agreed. But we can move forward, together, if that's what you want. I looked at him, really looked at him. The man who had broken my heart, the man who had spent 6 months searching for me, the man who had waited patiently for a second chance. I do, I said finally, want to move forward, together. His smile was like sunrise breaking through clouds. Slowly, Giving me every chance to pull away, he leaned forward. I met him halfway, our lips meeting in a kiss that felt both familiar and entirely new. When we broke apart, I saw in his eyes the same mixture of hope and uncertainty I felt in my own heart. We weren't fixed, we weren't healed, but we were beginning again, with open eyes and honest hearts. "Stay for dinner?" I asked. "I'd like that," he replied. As we moved into my half-unpacked kitchen, I felt a sense of rightness settle over me. Not because we were perfect, we weren't. Not because everything was resolved, it wasn't. But because we were choosing each other, deliberately and consciously, with all our flaws and fears laid bare. I had quit when I thought he loved her more. He had chased me when I tried to disappear. And now, somehow, we'd found our way back to each other, not to where we'd been, but to somewhere new, somewhere honest, somewhere real. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. It was something better, a beginning.